Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Fallujah vocalist Kyle Schaefer to the podcast. Fallujah's new record, Xenotaph, is out this Friday on Nuclear Blast Records. Kyle talks about not worrying about the pressure of joining an established band, the vision behind the band's new record, recapturing the technical and heavy elements, and a lot more. Xenotaph is easily one of my top 5 favorite records of 2025 so far, so do not miss it on Friday when it drops. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of As the Story Grows. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome. Thanks so much for checking us out. You can find links in our show notes or at asthestorygrows.com for our Discord community, our mailing list, and our Patreon, where you can get early access to every episode for $1 a month. And if you aren't already subscribed to the podcast, I would love it if you subscribed on your podcast platform of choice. Enjoy today's conversation with Kyle Schaefer from Fallujah.
How's it going, dude? Thanks for being flexible.
Good, yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I tried to use StreamYards for a different interview like about a week ago, and it was the same thing. Just it acts like it can't access my camera or mic, and it's like check if other applications are open, but there's nothing open, and I've closed everything and restarted Chrome. I'm not sure how to get around it. Yeah. It normally works for Zoom and Google and stuff, but I don't know what's going on.
That's so weird. Yeah, I know. Like sometimes if people are using Safari, it won't work. And then like, I don't know, the other day I was talking to someone and I like put on Spotify to have their album in my ear headphones and they're like, now I can't hear you. And I was like, okay. Well, no more Spotify.
Right. So, no musical app.
Yeah. Glad we got it worked out.
Well, cool. Yeah.
We'll rain check.
No, yeah. This is good.
Are you on the West Coast?
No, I'm from the West Coast. I'm from San Jose, California,
okay.
But I live near Nashville, Tennessee now.
Okay. What took you to Nashville?
It was a bunch of things at once. Like my whole band moved here basically.
Okay.
And I beat like our guitarist here by like 2 weeks. It was just we're kind of around the same age and sort of at the same points in life where like California is cool, but it's so expensive. And it's like there's a lot of things at once. Like my wife wanted to move out of state too and like try to buy a place, instead of paying insane amounts to like rent a tiny place in San Jose. And just happened to align with like my day job wasn't going to last much longer with touring and everything. Like so it's like, okay, I think if we move to Nashville, then we can like afford to live there without my day job. And the band's looking at moving there too. We recorded our last Fallujah album here, like about 10 minutes from where I live now. So like we kind of knew the area. We got friends here. It's a lot of things at once.
Yeah, that's rad.
Yeah.
That's rad. What I know Nashville, obviously country music capital. It's like a Christian music hub too. How is it if you're this like a metal band?
It's actually cool. There's like a growing scene here for sure. Like I feel like I'm not too tapped into like the real local scene yet. Like I'm sure I'm ignorant to most of the local bands. Like I've met a few, but I have a good handful of like friends here that I know from touring and stuff. Like the band Entheos lives here. A bunch of the band Inferi lives here. Other bands like Demon King. Yeah, just a bunch of bands I kind of know from like the metal scene, like from the internet really, and from touring and stuff. Happen to live here, so we actually have a kind of cool little like local friend group scene going on here. Nice. So it's growing for sure. I think more metal bands are going to keep moving here. It just makes sense for a lot of reasons.
Nice. I feel, especially the older I get, the less in touch I am with whatever's happening locally. It's just like,
sure, I
know what's happening, but also I'm 40 and whatever cool thing is happening for teenagers, I'm not allowed to be involved in.
Yeah, I used to be very tapped into my local scene, like in the Bay Area in California. Here again, I don't know a whole lot yet. I've met some like random local bands here and there, but I feel like I still don't know most of it.
Yeah. It gets tougher as you get older and have responsibilities, and it's like I could go to a show, but my kids have extracurricular activities. So
yeah. I mean, we had our first kid like 5 months ago, so I know how it is now too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other world.
Yeah. Right.
What's growing up like?
It was good. Like for me, like in California, it was good. Yeah, I'm from San Jose, California, so lived there pretty much my whole life. It was cool. I don't know how to chill upbringing for sure. Didn't get into music until a little bit later. Like I had like zero interest in music until like high school, and then just kind of tried to catch up from there.
What was that entry point where things like connected with you? And
I remember a friend showed the first band I liked was Green Day, and I remember a friend showed me a Green Day song like on his iPod, and like it was so long ago. It was like going into freshman year of high school, but like I remember being on like a bus trip or something somewhere. I don't even remember the details exactly, but like it was like the first time something like clicked for me. I was like, this is cool. Like I want to buy an iPod so I can listen to Green Day, you know? And really just started from there. And then I had a couple of friends in high school that like showed me a bunch of cool stuff, like more underground bands, like getting more into the like metal and prog and like math rock and mathcore type of scenes. And just really like moved on from there. Started like making really shitty music by myself with like a synthesizer and stuff. And then started learning guitar like later in high school and just stuck with it.
Nice. Were you, once you kind of got into the local scene, were you like head first, like trying to form bands? And
kind of. It took me a while actually. Like I remember like some of my friends had bands, and I thought that was really cool. Like I would go see their bands in high school, but like the music I was making in high school was not like normal music or like music that like people would want to like be in a band. Like how do I even say it? I was just making whatever weird music I could, like with guitar, kind of with my synth. Like it wasn't like I wasn't playing anything live. I wasn't like performing, and it wasn't like regular music. It was like weird experimental stuff, I guess, like whatever I could figure out how to make. But then when I went to college, that was where I had which was in San Luis Obispo in California. That's when I got an actual band together. It was like an indie rock band and stuff, but that's when I like got involved with the scene from a like participating, like performing sort of way. But before that in high school, I was just a fan for sure. Like I wasn't really like, you know, I had my weird little project, but that was it.
Nice. What'd you go to college for?
General engineering.
All right.
Yeah. I did a music minor, and I use the music minor a lot more these days than the engineering stuff.
Yeah. I went looking for your background to see like what else you might have done, and there's nothing on the internet that I could find. Like, so what's the trajectory from like starting an indie rock band in college to frontman of Fallujah?
Yeah. So I had my indie rock band, and that was when I got like experience, I guess, playing shows and, you know, like playing live, doing all that type of stuff. You know, I was singing and playing guitar in that band. So that's really where I like learned how to sing too, was from that project called Tilted Tides way back. And then basically I was a metal fan well before I started that indie rock band too. Like already all of my guitar influences were metal bands. Like I didn't really know how to make a metal project at the time. Like indie rock was more doable for me. Sure. Especially from like a recording and mixing standpoints and stuff. But I'd like dabbled a little bit. Like, you know, I was eager to start a metal project. And like, even while I had the indie rock band, I was like, someday I'm going to start a metal project and like figure that out. And so near the end of college, like when people started graduating, some of my bandmates left, you know, the band kind of split up just because everybody's, you know, moving back to different places or whatever. That's when I was like, okay, this is time to start my metal solo project, like prog metal stuff, which is called Archaeologist. And so I started that in like 2013, and I'm still doing that project to this day as like my, now it's kind of a side project with Fallujah, but sort of my like personal project. And so for that, like I would write and record stuff by myself, but that one did turn into a live band. I was able to, you know, be involved with the Bay Area scene and all that. So played a bunch of local shows and stuff for a few years, had like a few different live lineups that came and went. And basically, while I had the live band for that project, Archaeologist, at one point, I was working on this big song in like 2018, this big like 12-minute song that had like a guest feature spot on it. And I wrote the guest spot with somebody in particular, a guy from a different band. But the whole time that I had this other guy in mind, which was now he's a friend of mine, it's Paul from Cynic, was like the guy who I originally wanted to play on my song. The whole time I had him in mind, my bassist, his name is George, he was a huge Fallujah fan. Fallujah was like his favorite band. And I kind of knew Fallujah, not too well, but like we're from the same area, so I'd hear the name around a lot, you know. I was like, yeah, I hadn't really gotten into them, but I'm like, yeah, they're pretty cool, whatever, like, I haven't really done the deep dive, but my bassist loved them. And the whole time he kept telling me, like, get Scott from Fallujah. This is guy Scott that plays guitar in Fallujah. He's like, get him to play on the song, do the guest feature. And the whole time I was like, no, I'm getting this other guy. But when when the other guy didn't work out, I was like, okay, George, like, we'll do your idea. We'll get that guy from that Fallujah band. I'm sure he's cool. You know, seems like a good guitarist. Like, yeah, sure it'll be cool. Whatever. Like, we'll have him on the song. So we did. We hired Scott, who's my now bandmate, you know, to feature on the song, and had never met in person. I had never seen Fallujah live. We talked online like very briefly once or twice, just about sort of the guest feature, you know, and all that. And you know, business as normal, released the song and everything. A couple of years after that, Scott reached out to me and asked if I did the vocals on that song that he played on. And I was like, yeah, like, why do you ask? You know, like, what's going on? And kind of explained that Fallujah was, you know, privately auditioning new vocalists and asked if I want to try out. So I did try out and just sort of worked out from there. Went straight into recording our last album, Empyrean. Like, writing some of the songs, or like the vocals for some of those songs, was like part of my audition process. Nice. So there's like a few songs on that album that I wrote before I was in the band, you know, in terms of writing the lyrics and everything. That ended up, you know, actually being the singles for the album of all things. Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of the onboarding process. And like, so it was kind of funny that like I joined this band having never toured before, had only done like local shows with Archaeologist and with my old indie rock band and stuff, you know, one-off shows, and had never played a show with Fallujah before I was official. Like, normally it's, you know, I think the more normal route is to like maybe have somebody fill in on tour, see if you get along, you know, see if everybody's normal people, nobody's a psychopath, like type of thing, like, you know, spend some time together. And then you're like, we like this guy, let's make him official in the band. That's kind of the more normal route. Yeah. I think for me, it was a bit of a leap of faith from the band's point of view, like sort of trusting me to be the new official guy, like not knowing, you know, that much about me, honestly. Like, I think we hung out in person once or maybe twice before we met up to like record the album and stuff. So, yeah, it was definitely interesting. It was like, there was almost a year where I was working with Fallujah behind the scenes, making this album before I was announced. Oh, wow. And so it was like, yeah, this long process of this secret thing, like, you know, I'm joining this cool band and I can't tell anybody yet. So yeah, it was a big change from the stuff I was doing before.
Yeah. And that's like right, I don't know, end of lockdown, right? Where all that's happening.
Exactly. So you're exactly. Like... Yeah, 100%. That shook up a lot of the band. That's all I was going to say. That like, it's no coincidence that I came in at the end of lockdown, because like so many things changed during that for so many bands. But sorry, I was cutting you off.
No, I was just gonna say, what is that process like of like trying to audition and like finding like, am I comfortable touring and like being in the studio masked up and shit, right?
Yeah, well, so luckily it was actually near the end of that. This was like September 2021, I guess. Yeah, the album came out 2022, so it was like late 2021.
Yeah, I guess we're pretty much on the back end of all that. So yeah,
and we recorded the album in Tennessee. You know, so it's like it was not so tight over here. Sure. But yeah, but it was later on. Like, it was like we went on tour as soon as like the first single from this album came out. So it wasn't like a COVID release as far as the album. It was like my first tour with the band was the first tour back after COVID. So I kind of joined on the tail end of things. But when we started talking, it was like full lockdown. So we were all just working remote and stuff, which was also due to the distance, because like Scott, who I was communicating with when I was auditioning, he lived down in LA. I was in San Jose. So that's like a 6 or 7 hour drive apart. So like we would have been working remote anyways. But yeah, it was interesting. And I think a lot of the lineup, like shakeups in the band, were sort of indirectly due to lockdown stuff too. Like just people's situations change and lives change, and the band suddenly stops touring and there's no touring money coming in. It's like big changes. Like it's a hard time for bands to keep lineups together.
Yeah. Because you did not have this like history or background with the band, were you able to come in kind of, I guess free of pressure, not like, metal fans can be gatekeepy and like, oh, new singer. They like what they like. Like, were you able to kind of just let that go and just like, because you didn't know?
It was something I kept in mind, but I never found it too hard to manage. Like, I think I was pretty confident about what I was doing because I thought about it a lot. Like, in terms of not being shunned by the fan base, I guess. Like, so I'm the third vocalist in Fallujah. There was one vocalist that was like, founding member in the band for 10 years or something like that, on all the favorite albums. Like when he left and Fallujah hired a new vocalist who had a very different tone, very different style. Like it kind of went from primarily like low death metal style vocals to primarily like higher screams, which I thought was cool. I thought that album was great before I knew anybody in the band. But the second vocalist, like he had a pretty different style, and like some people loved that album, some people hated it, but I think he did have a hard time being accepted by the fan base because the style was so different, and like people, like you said, metal fans are very particular with what they like, and the vocals had been very consistent up to that point. And so when I come in as the third guy, I'm like, okay, like the stuff that everybody online is asking for is like, the demands are very simple. They're very straightforward. They're like, we like the low death metal growls. So like, okay, I'm going to do some low death metal growls at least a good chunk of the time, Yeah, I'm happy to do. Like I like that style of vocals too. I like a lot of different screams, but I'm like, all right, no problem. We can make that work. And I feel like I can still express myself however I want as a vocalist, but I'm like, okay, that's not too hard, know? And that's, like just some considerations like that. Like I spent a lot of time really studying Fallujah's older music and just like even thinking about just the writing tendencies of like the rhythmic patterns of the vocals and the phrasing and which parts get vocals and which parts don't, like things like that, just to really feel like I understood the assignment, I guess, like not to worry too much about copying that exactly, but just to be thoughtful and conscious about like my decisions when writing for the band. So that like at least if I'm changing the formula, it's not out of like ignorance, in my own point of view, like, so that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, I still want to express myself, which like I wouldn't write or sound the same as old Fallujah because I'm a different guy, but still I want to feel like I'm very informed on what Fallujah is and like deeply understand the music. So I spent a lot of time studying the older stuff. And I think with all that in mind, like I felt very confident going into the record. And also it was a very like, when I heard the instrumental tracks, I was like, this is already a winner. Like people are going to love this album because the instrumentals are so sick. Like it's like already setting me up for a home run as the new vocalist because like the solos are crazy and the songs are awesome. And I was like, okay, people are going to love this album. This is like, it's going to be a crowd pleaser just in terms of the instrumentals, And so it's like, it's kind of both. Like when you ask if there was like pressure, it's like, it was something I considered. Like I wasn't just doing my own stuff without any consideration of like what was going on, but I did feel confident given the specifics of the situation and sort of what I felt like I could do.
New album, Xenotaph. Am I pronouncing that right?
We say Xenotaph, but it's whatever. Okay. It's a made up word, so you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Where did the album title and concept come from?
Yeah, so it is a concept album. There's like a story that goes through the whole thing that I sort of worked on before I wrote any lyrics for it. The title came way later, so I'll talk about the title after, I suppose.
Okay.
Because the title was like we really struggled with the title, and that was like the last piece of anything for the album. Like we had artwork, we had final mixes, we had song titles for everything, and could not find a single title we liked until we came up with that one. So that it came later. But basically so the concept is for this album, I knew I wanted to tell one sort of story throughout, like our previous album Empyrean had different concepts for each song, and the concepts were something we spent a lot of time talking about. And I was like, let's just talk about it once this time, pick one concept, and then I can just write a lot of songs about one thing, but also at the same time, like give the album kind of its own identity. Because I really wanted, like before we started this album, like one thing I knew I wanted was for the album to have like an identity, like to stand out from the rest of the catalog, being like, this album it has its own sort of feelings or ideas, whatever. And like, I want this album to be its own special thing that like feels new and cohesive and intentional. And so concept album made sense to me. So basically, I wanted to write something vaguely in the realm of like sci-fi, because we all love sci-fi in the band, and just the aesthetics of the artwork and everything over the years, blends with that well, I think. But I didn't want to lose like the like personal emotional aspect of the lyrics. So I was like, okay, something that's like, it feels like some trippy sci-fi story, but also somehow emotional at the same time and like relatable, like real. So I basically arrived at the concept of death as like my sort of topic for the story, because I thought it was something that is like real and does have like a lot of room to write like in a very visceral emotional sense about, but at the same time has this sort of like mystery to it, and this leaves a lot of room for imagination, like what happens when we die. Maybe it's some crazy sci-fi journey that happens when you die. And so that was sort of the idea, was the story begins at the moment of the narrator's death, when he wakes up like in some other dimension basically, like, and I thought rather than imagining an afterlife as anything resembling heaven or hell, or like what people typically imagine, like imagine if it's just so outside of your comprehension that you're just like, what the fuck is this? Where am I? Like, what is, like just so far beyond anything that anybody could have like imagined, and like literally beyond like human senses, is like something that I try to convey through the lyrics. And basically the character wakes up and meets, basically sees the album cover. Like the album cover was chosen early in the process, and I worked it into the story basically. And I imagined the figure on the cover as this like angelic sort of guide that he meets when he awakens in this new dimension. And basically, as the story unfolds, like this guide sort of takes him through this new world and helps him to understand where he is and what's going on, and like, which also involves a lot of reflection, looking back like at his past life and memories, and there's this whole sort of like inward and outward psychedelic journey, I guess, being guided through by this angelic sort of being. And the character becomes very like attached to this world, feels like he's in this new enlightened plane of existence, like he's truly transcended, that this is like the real elevated world, like, happy to leave his old body and world behind basically. But because one, there has to be some kind of plot events in a story, and two, this is a death metal album, I don't want a nice journey just about, oh, this guy goes here and it's wonderful. Like, the twist that I came up with that happens later is the fact that it's revealed much later in the album that basically, just when this character is so attached to this world and, no longer has a desire to go back, basically, because there's this element of like having the choice to go back and be reincarnated or something like that, but the character chooses to stay essentially. But basically the plot twist is that the whole thing has been an illusion. Character's not even dead at all. He's like asleep or in a coma or something like that. Oh, and this being is basically some sort of like interdimensional parasite that has gotten into his mind and is like convincing him to stay trapped in this world so it like can feed on his soul or something like that. And, it's all an illusion essentially. Yeah. And basically at the end, like the character escapes, gets away from this thing and wakes up back in the real world after having thought he was dead and experienced all these things that you literally can't ever describe to somebody, and basically sort of ends on a note where it's like this sort of ambiguous sort of feeling where it's like survived and he's back, but also like, what was that? Was any of that real? It felt, very real. And like, you don't know if you do go there when you die, you don't know if this thing's going to come back to get you. It's, just sort of this like whole weird sort of psychedelic, like questioning yourself of like, what was that? It's, that's sort of the story.
on a musical front, you guys keep a lot of the ambience from Empyrean, but to me, this record feels more technical on the tech debt's spectrum of things. Was that intentional? How much did the anniversary tours kind of influence that decision?
Yeah, great question. I agree with you. I think it is more like, to me, I think it's more technical, and like at the very least, it's definitely a lot more flashy. Like I was really, I was pushing a lot from the beginning for this to come out as like a very colorful, dynamic, like crazy progressive album. So like, there were certain things where when Scott was writing, like a lot of Fallujah stuff is harder than it sounds. Like sometimes aspects of there's like, for example, very like deep, like sort of like harmony, like in the chord progressions and stuff, like pretty advanced, like stuff. But a lot of times it's very subtle, is what I'm saying. And I was really trying to like turn down the subtlety on this album and turn up like the flashy stuff. And so like there were certain things where I would push our guitarist to like just do the stuff that sounded crazy, like where like Scott would play something and he'd be like, yeah, it just sounds like some sweeping exercise, whatever. And I'm like, to you, it sounds like that. To a normal person, that sounds amazing and insane. Like, do that. You know, like that's the type of stuff that's going to blow people's minds. Like, I feel like I have that. Even though I play guitar, I feel like I can bring that perspective of like, I'm not so good at guitar that I've lost what sounds crazy to normal people. You know. Anyways, long story short, it's I knew that I wanted to bring more clean vocals and more like melody and stuff like that into this album, but I really didn't want it to feel like it was becoming more accessible or more poppy. So I was like, let's contrast these like more accessible vocals and like more vocal hooks with crazier guitars, like turn up the technicality, turn up the technical and the progressive and all that, so that it's like opposite of being dumbed down. You know, I want it to be like crazier. And so I think we're all on board for that, but I really pushed for that also. Nice. And I feel like it worked out because it's like, to me, again, it's one of those things where like this album is very much in line with music that I love, like feel very natural to me. But at the same time, I kind of knew that it would go over well because like the complaints people have had in the past when Fallujah has like changed directions or tried different things is that it's like people want enough death metal vocals. They want crazy riffs. They want fast stuff. They want like wild solos, you know? I'm like, there's totally room for all that. We can just turn up, you know, all the progressive elements and then have tons of room to express ourselves around that too. So to me, that was pretty intentional. And you asked something about the anniversary tour, which last year, like you brought up, we did a 10-year anniversary tour for the album The Flesh Prevails. That came out in 2014, way before I was in the band. But I think that playing that album a ton of times and just relearning it and just becoming so acquainted with it, sort of in the middle of our writing process, like or while we were working on early demos for these new songs, I think that definitely informed the direction of the new stuff a little bit. Like I know that there were some parts where I in particular like took influence from that music, from the older stuff. And I think there are like a few moments on this album that are reminiscent of it. Like I think the album is very different overall, but there are parts where I'm like, that's like a Flesh Prevails part to me. And I feel like that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't just played the whole album, you know? Actually, there's even a fun little secret fact. There's even, I literally sampled the Flesh Prevails synths in a few parts. So there's like actual pieces of the Flesh Prevails that I like snuck into this album. Like nobody could ever notice. It's so subtle, but it's like, it's technically in there. Technically, like this album has a little bit of that album's DNA in it, which I thought was kind of cool.
Nice. Album's out June 13th. What's the rest of 2025 look like for the band?
Yeah. So that's our main focus right now is the album, you know, promoting that, you know, getting the pre-orders and music videos and all that type of stuff out. We're going to start touring later in the year. Right now we have like a little bit of a break from touring. But we just announced a Europe tour for early next year, and we'll be touring the States later this year. Not announced yet, so can't like get into the details. But we'll be touring. So it's like we have a little bit of off time, which works out for me with the new baby and everything too. You know, I didn't make us do that. It just happened to work out that way. You know. Yeah. But so I'm like, okay, this works well. But you'll be seeing us. We're gonna start touring like closer to the end of this year, and I think you're going to see us touring very heavily from that point on for the next year or whatever after that.